I started DJing in 96, originally from San Francisco. Really cut my teeth when it came to the DJ side of it when I went to school down at UCLA. And so moved from San Francisco to LA in 98. Um, and then just fell in love with not only the DJ side of it, but also the education side. And so I helped start a company called DJ City back in 99. It started in essentially a dorm room with a bunch of us. That brought me into that opened up distributing records. So I was distributing records for Kevin Scott back in the day before there was direct music service. All of this was on wax. Was also distributing, different compilation records. Some of you remember the compilation records from back in the day.
Sure.
So like Lethal Weapon, Mix Factors, all the stuff that Jazzy Jim was producing out of San Francisco, and then all of Kevin Scott's stuff, and then Vice and Echo and whatnot. And so we had a record store called Rehab Records in LA. Long story short, a couple of us were partnered on it, and we were looking around one day and we're like, hey, this is great. We actually have a record store, but we said that we were going to do something for the community. And we throw events, and that's great. We throw like rap battles and stuff like that. But it would be great to have something that really helped people from the community a lot more. And then sort of at the same time, all of us kind of had this thought of like, what if we started DJ school? And then then the other thought that all of us had at the exact same moment was like, how do you start a DJ school? Like, where do you even start? So through my process I appreciate Alan's, sales tips a ton, because I also fully recognize that we are all salespeople and we're all selling something. And my background initially was in sales. I was selling these records and cold calling stores. And, I often in my 44-year-old self need to tap into that a lot of times to remind myself to, not be afraid of those no's and to be reminded of that. Because at some point you reach a certain level and you kind of are used to hearing yes, which, means that maybe we're not pushing further enough. But anyways, we ended up, I remember that Jam Master Jay from Run DMC had started Scratch DJ Academy about a year and a half before that. And it was right before he was murdered. And I knew that because I was dealing with Rock and Soul and a bunch of like stores out on the East Coast. And my partners were like, call them. And of course, because I was used to cold calling, I was like, fine, sure. Yeah. Picked up the phone, called them. Hey, this is Hapa from Rehab Records and DJ City out in Los Angeles. Oh, yeah. We know of you guys. You do? Talk about best kept secret. I mean, that we really did think that we were, a secret, and it was very regional at that point too. And so next thing I knew, they were like, yeah, sure. Sounds interesting. Like, come out to New York. Let's hash it out. Next thing I knew was flying back to LA with the license to be able to operate Scratch DJ Academy in Los Angeles, and then went on to essentially run the brand. So I was the national brand director for 15 years, essentially, for Scratch DJ Academy, opening up schools in Chicago, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Miami. And life's been interesting. Like, the twists and turns have been interesting. I left Scratch in 2019 to set off to do some other things, went back to school, ended up becoming a professor, teach DJing now as a professor. Ended up launching something called the DJ Coach, and we have the djcoach.com where we have courses, coaching, community there. And now I've got a program called Start to DJ, which is bringing DJ education into K through 12 schools. So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting journey, and man, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Sorry, I had a problem with my computer. The battery all of a sudden tripped on me. Good. So I should have been plugged in, but I apologize.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. So Hapa, let me ask you something. We always have this thing. If you knew then what you know now, right? Would you have done all of that? So go back. No way.
No way I would have done all that. Like, no, because it needed to be fed to me one step at a time. I mean, even still right now, like tomorrow, I can digest tomorrow. I can't digest 5 years from now, like, of what that will be. And it is a very overwhelming feeling in a lot of ways. I've been very privileged to be in a position where I feel like I've got a machete in hand and I'm like chopping through the rainforest. DJ education at that time was unheard of. I mean, literally, my initial thoughts were, number one, this isn't going to work. Number two, like, what are we going to do? Just set up a whole bunch of turntables and then have people come in and practice and try to charge them something? Like, maybe it's like a gym model and we charge a fee for that, and hopefully people sort of get something out of it. But, the process of writing curriculum, building a certification program, like all of those things, writing a book. I wrote a textbook. I've actually got it here. It's a little bit beat up, but like, writing the textbook, like all these things, I had no idea that like those were down the road. And it's actually, to me, that's been one of the best parts of it, right? Is to have it reveal itself like piece by piece.
Yeah, I think that's really life. Is you can't plan going forward, but I think what everybody listening needs to look at is, if you take a look back and see what you've accomplished, right? It's okay to give yourself a little pat on the back and say, I've accomplished a lot. Because a lot of people, if you're feeling a little bit stuck or feeling a little bit down, it's okay to say, gee, I suck right now or whatever. But when you look back and go, wow, I've done a lot. Yeah. I've done a lot. But you also have to have that mindset of the new business, right? You have to not be afraid to fail. And I did a presentation. I know you didn't get a chance to see it, called Not Another Competitor, right? People always complain about another new competitor. And I say, yeah, but you were the new competitor. Like every one of us was the new competitor at one time. So you can't complain that somebody else has given it a shot. As a matter of fact, hope that they do well, because first of all, it's better to compete with people doing it well.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Secondly, they're going to make you better, because would you innovate as much if you didn't have competition? Right?
100%. Like there's that whole Larry Bird and Magic Johnson like documentary that I think gets to that pretty well on that side,
Right.
And how many stories? Yeah, how many stories do you hear about Michael Jordan still playing his guts out until somebody talked shit to him? And then it was like any NBA player who's ever talked shit to Jordan has said it was like the biggest mistake ever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. How do you take somebody who's playing at 100% who now goes to 120 in your face because you just said that?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's in there. But would he have gone there, right, if they didn't do that, right? It takes that. And I like to look at this and say, what's the worst that could happen? If I make this decision, what's the worst that could happen? The worst thing to me is not making the decision. That's the worst thing. You say, I'm not going for it, own it. Right. If I probably a bad example, but if somebody said, hey, this stock is going to be really good, I say, nah, I'm not going to do it. Then the stock takes off. Right. Okay. Sure. I own that. I can own that too. Right. But make the decision that I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. Don't let somebody else make the decision for you. When my son was at a job and he was doing really well, but he hit a ceiling, and they loved him. He was getting paid well and all that stuff, but he just felt like there was nowhere to go. So he looked at getting to another company. It was a startup, and it was, not a lot of security and all that kind of stuff. Good potential upside if they go public or whatever. And I said, so let's talk about this. What's the worst that could happen? You got a roof over your head? Yeah. You got food on the table? Yep. You got money in the bank? Yep. Okay, so what's the worst that could happen? Those are all the worst things that could happen, and none of those are going to happen. So what's the worst? So he went to this other company, didn't like it. He got the next title, right? That's the one he wanted. That brought him to the company he's at, where he's already been moved up and he loves it. But had he not left the company 2 companies ago and taken that chance, right? Yeah. I'm in this industry. I was talking to somebody today and telling him, I'm in my industry because I was in a job getting paid well, company car benefits and all that stuff, hating every moment of my life. And I took a job in a new industry, knew nothing about. Cold calling, never done it, right? No benefits, commission only. My wife was pregnant, and I said yes, right? And it's so long that the baby that my wife was pregnant with, his son turned 8 yesterday. Okay, that's how long I'm doing this, right? Because I took the leap, and you know what it was, Hapa? I actually said to my wife, I'm going for this because this is not a life for us. I actually said it's not the money. I was in my 20s. I said it's not the money. It's like, and it blew my mind because I meant it, right? I said, but I know I can sell. I am confident in my ability to sell. So I'll learn the product. I'll learn cold calling. I'll learn all that. And that's 34 years ago.
Yeah, you got to bet on yourself, you know? You definitely have to bet on yourself.
So, Hapa, tell everyone what you're up to now. What's your biggest project that you're working on now? Because I think it's amazing.
I think there's two pretty big projects right now, and they're both like really wrapped into one another to some degree. Like on one level, on one hand, it's our K through 12 program called Start to DJ. So we really feel like DJ needs to be introduced to schools. Like there's all sorts of statistics that are out there around, some people say 80, some people say closer to 90% of kids that are school aged do not have music in their actual day in schools. And that's crazy because you see these kids walking around and you like with headphones on, and music is such a part of their identity. It's a part of who they are, what they gravitate towards, what their passion is. And so we're really trying to bring DJ education to schools right now. And we've got a great program called Start to DJ, which is a facilitated learning model. So we certify a campus coach to be on the ground. That could be a math teacher, a principal. We have some schools where the principal of the school is the campus coach, helping their fifth graders after school with our DJ program, which is awesome. And I think that just helps everybody in our industry. You know, it really just widens the overall funnel of people who are exposed to DJing. So that's a big one, man. That takes up a lot of my bandwidth, and we've written a bunch of, we have student workbooks for that. It's been really great. The other one that's sort of somewhat connected to this is I've got a project that's a VR project. It's actually a mixed reality project called the app is called TribeXR. It's available on the Meta Quest store, and essentially you have access to CDJ 3000s in virtual reality, and it's incredible. As somebody who comes from hardware, it's the next best thing, and it's pretty amazing what we can do with the technology. So I've got a bunch of education that's in there, lesson content, and work with our team on trying to make that the best product possible. But I appreciate the comment, Alan, about the competition, because we recently had that happen in our space for that VR project. Got some friends who are over at Algorithm DJ, which I work very closely with those guys, and they've got a great iOS app and a great mobile app, and they've now entered the VR space and have created a really awesome product in that space. And I think it's really lit a fire under our team's butt on the TribeXR side, and so I definitely welcome that. And same on the education side. I mean, I know I'm not the only game in town when it comes to education, and I love that. I love that I have a great relationship with the guys over at Crossfader and Phil Morse over at Digital DJ Tips, and there's so many people and so many great educators now online, and I think that that's necessary because I'm not the guy for everybody, Right. And our coaching style is different, and for those that really thrive in that, like, awesome. Like, I'm glad that they're a part of our community. And for those that don't, like, I hope that they do find somebody that they can resonate with, because the worst thing is that somebody gives up on a dream that they had and they stop DJing. Like, that's the worst situation. So, and I've referred people to our competition, when we haven't been able to be the right fit for them. And it took me a while to get there because my immature, like, it took real maturity and a real, like, coming into my own and a real sense of security, when it came to that, because, I think in this industry, we're sort of taught, this scarcity model. There's one DJ that wins the gig, and there's one DJ that's on that stage. And, if you're not first, you're last. Right. That whole thing.
But there's a lot of other stages. That's the thing. Yeah. So the guy that founded the National Speakers Association, Cabot Robert, he said, we're not trying to get a bigger piece of the pie. We're trying to create a bigger pie. So there's a piece for everybody.
Sure.
That's right. And when you look at it and say, I do this when I'm doing sales training or when I'm talking to a client, I say, you know what? let me find out what you need, and I'll tell you if I'm the right fit. And if I'm not, let me find you somebody who is, because sometimes we're not the right fit.
And what a waste of time if you're not, for everybody, right? Like, why try and force that? Like, if you're not the right fit, you're not the right fit.
Right. I heard somebody, I was at an event one time, I think it was in Mexico, and I heard somebody say, if you don't want the gig, just charge them a high price. I said, oh, no. Yeah. If you don't want the gig, you don't want the gig. The high price doesn't make up for it, because then you got paid, and now you're doing something you didn't want to do, and now you feel dirty. And I've done that. I think we've all done that, certainly new in our businesses, right? We had to learn the hard way. We've taken that. We've said yes, we should have said no. And sometimes no is the right answer for them, as well as I was on a podcast. Somebody said, why do you do what you do? I said, it's easy. At this point in my life, it has to do two things. It has to bring you value and bring me joy. If it doesn't bring you value and bring me joy, I don't want the check. And if it brings both of those, I will cash the check, right? But if it brings you value and doesn't bring me joy, it's disingenuous, because I cannot be giving you my full self if it's not bringing me joy. And if it brings me joy and doesn't bring you value, I've cheated you. So it has to do both of those things. Otherwise, the answer is no.
Yeah. I just wrote that down, by the way. Thank you for that. Quote you on that.
All right.